Hi, the time has come to talk about my favourite books that I read last year. Whenever I make these videos, I'm never talking about the books that came out last year, but just the ones that I read in 2015. Last year I read 50 books in total, and I've picked my favourite 10 to show you. I'm going to start with one that will not come as a surprise at all. Actually, I think you guys might have seen most of these books pass by on my channel over the last year, but it is The Martian by Andy Weir. This is a book that I actually got in 2014, but somehow I never got around to reading, and then when the film came out, that was the time to read it. This was absolutely hilarious, and I think most of my friends by now have read it and absolutely adore it. And out of this whole list, it is probably one of my favorites. It's about an astronaut who gets stuck on Mars on his own and basically uses his sarcasm to stay alive. Then next I have Lorali by Dockrill. There's going to be a lot of hotkey books in here. I worked for hotkey books for the last 2.5 years, and so a lot of the reading that I would do through the year was from hotkeys. So yeah, there will be quite a few of those coming. I haven't really read a lot of mermaid books, so this was one of my first. This is from the point of view of 3 different characters. It is about Lorali, who is a mermaid who is washed ashore in Hastings. It is about Rory, the teenage boy that finds her, and it is from the point of view of the ocean, who sees and knows all. Now the writing of this is a brilliant combination of like the super poetic voice of the ocean mixed in with chat room speak and hashtags. There's some really sort of tragic stories in this. There's some outrageous characters, some very hot, slick looking pirates, and a mermaid swimming down the Thames to say hi to the government. Then next I have a sort of shared spot for 2 books by Louise and ONeill, which I actually did a double review for, Asking for It and also Only Ever Yours. They are completely different books, but I read them consecutively. I think Louise and ONeill doing some pretty damn good things. This is a book about rape culture set in a small Irish town, and Only Ever Yours is a sort of outlandish dystopian novel that as you read it, you realise that it has a lot of similarities to our culture. Louise does a really good job of sort of describing the dilemmas that teenage girls have to deal with that they really shouldn't have to deal with, and I'm really looking forward to see what she'll write next. Next, The Big Lie by Julie Mayhew, also by Hotkey Books. I sold this at Summer in the City and at Young Adult LitCon, and my favourite way to pitch it was always a contemporary Nazi England lesbian love story with ice skating. Feels like it's set in North Korea, and imagine what would happen if they invited Justin Bieber to come do a concert. You guys know that I love really sort of harsh and heartbreaking stories. This is definitely one of them. Next I've got Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. This is a lovely graphic novel by someone that I've been following online for forever. It's about a girl called Nimona who becomes a sidekick to supervillain Lord Blackheart. Nimona is also a shapeshifter, and the dynamic of the two of them is just like grumpy supervillain and really rambunctious and enthusiastic sidekick who gets them into trouble. It feels a little bit like a superhero story, but it also has fantasy mixed in. I think I read this in my review as well, but the dedication of this is fantastic. To all the monster girls. I'm just gonna keep going with the comic / graphic novels. Here we have Step Aside Pops, Hark a Vagrant by Kate Beaton. As soon as I knew this was coming out this year, I knew it was going to be in my top 10. These are literary and historical cartoons. They're absolutely hilarious. There is so much Wuthering Heights in this, which I love obviously, and a lot of the Lady of Shalott as well. Again, there are quite a few cartoons in here that I just don't get because I haven't read the book or I don't know the historical background, even though Kate does provide a lot of extra information. I just love it so much, and if you have a birthday coming up with someone who loves history or books, this has to be the gift. Okay, I'm moving on to more hotkey books. This is one of my all-time favorites of the year as well. It is Monsters by Emerald Fennell, who you might know from Call the Midwife. This is the story of 2 12-year-olds who meet in a small town in, I think, Cornwall. The girl is an orphan who's staying with her aunt and uncle in this creepy hotel. The boy has this really overbearing, mean mom, and they're staying in the hotel as well. This is about what happens when 2 people who shouldn't have met meet and just sort of bring out the worst in each other. There are these young women that are getting murdered in the town and they keep washing up on shore, and these 2 kids are obsessed with these murders. It has all the usual suspects in this crazy, small, creepy town. This is a super unsettling book, and I just want to read you one quote. It's actually the first sentence. "My parents got smushed to death in a boating accident when I was 9. Don't worry, I'm not that sad about it." This is in a sort of weird category because it feels like a picture book and a graphic novel with some sort of longer form text in it as well. I had a Shaun Tan book in either last year's or the year before's top 10 books of that year video. This year it is Tales from Outer Suburbia, which I'm actually borrowing from Lena, so I finally get to give it back to her now. It is a mix of short stories. Some are just image-based, some have a lot of text. There's definitely full pages of text as well, and then there's these very sort of poetic pages. I think the only way to describe what Shaun does is just beautiful. Both in the writing and the drawing, it's very peculiar. On the back it says, "Do you remember the water buffalo at the end of our street? Or the deep sea diver we found near the underpass? Do you know why dogs bark in the middle of the night?" I'm not actually sure how much Shaun has written, but I'm guessing it's quite a lot, so I'm gonna have to check that out. The next one I did a review for this year as well. Last hotkey book. This is Clariel by Garth Nix. Clariel wrote the Old Kingdom series, which I have been reading over the last couple of years and have absolutely fallen in love with. I know a lot of you read it when you were like 10 or 11, because it's quite a while ago, but now he has written a prequel which you can actually read totally on its own. It's set in the same world but like 600 years before the other stories. It has monsters and magic and finishing schools, and there's a bit of a twist to this at the end which you won't really realize if you haven't read the other books, but that's absolutely fine because if you love this then you can move on to the next ones. My favorite thing about Garth Nix is that you are actually really worried for the characters because he is so good at completely twisting the plot around. I feel like with a lot of books, you know, like, oh, if someone is running to get through a gate before they get captured, you know they're gonna make it through. And with this book, you're just on edge the whole time. Absolutely loved it. And then I've got one more graphic novel to finish it off, and it is The Gigantic Beard That Was Evil. This fits in very well with Shaun, I think. It does not have a lot of words. It is mostly just black and white drawings. It's about an island that's here, not there. Everything in here is very normal and everyone has a normal routine, and then this man's beard starts growing, and no matter what people do, it won't stop, and it's sort of threatening to take over the whole island. Obviously you can sit down and read this in about 30 minutes, but it is so beautiful. So those were my favorite 10 books I read in 2015. If you want to see the full list of books I read, you can go over to my GoodReads, which will be in the description. Of course, I would love to hear what your top 10 is, or even, you know, top 3. If you've made a video of your favorite books, feel free to link it in a comment as well, as I'd love to see it. I will talk to you guys later. Doei!